What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtonette. And the college football national championship game is set, Ohio State against Notre Dame. In this video, though, I'm going to be going over the semifinals, kind of giving some of my takeaways, the key moments from those games, and what both of these teams can take going into that national championship game. A little late on getting this out. My family was visiting this weekend, so I didn't really have a chance to film. Just got to enjoy time with them, getting to come out here and see the baby. But back at it this week. I'm going to have a video later this week also previewing the championship game, but in this one, kind of giving my thoughts on the semifinals. Before I get into it, though, if you're going to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I upload. But getting things started out, going over the Orange Bowl, where Notre Dame got a 27-24 win on a last-second field goal by Mr. January himself, Mitch Jeter. Obviously, a nice little play on words. Mr. November, Derek Jeter, had some infamous clutch moments with the New York Yankees on the baseball field. And in this case, Mitch Jeter has been really good for the Fighting Irish during this postseason run, especially in January and really throughout the whole process. But I'll get to that in a second. Some key moments here. Big moment in the first half. It was 10-0 Penn State. The Nittany Lions looked like they were not only dominating defensively, but they were doing what they needed to do offensively as well. In a 3rd and 5 on the Notre Dame 45, backup quarterback Steve Angeli stepped up with a 14-yard pass to Jordan Faison, and they got a field goal to end the drive and go into halftime just down 10-3. From there, the Fighting Irish really stepped up offensively in that second half, and really both teams did in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame rushed for 116 yards, which is a little lower than what they typically do, but Riley Leonard had 223 passing yards and a touchdown, and was able to overcome 2 interceptions as well. He also ran in a touchdown as well. It was an 8-play, 75-yard touchdown drive that tied the game at 10 to start the second half. So they were getting some momentum, and a big part of that was the play of wide receiver Jaden Greathouse. It was a great game for Greathouse. He made some big plays. He had 7 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown was another game tire that made it 24-all with only a few minutes left in the game. Then, obviously, what we saw at the end of this game, it was a big interception by Christian Gray, kind of maybe a questionable pass by Drew Aller. He even said after the game he was just trying to get the ball to the wide receiver's feet. Probably better in that situation. Got to have the awareness to maybe just take the sack. At that point, you're playing for overtime. Notre Dame probably wouldn't have had a chance to get the ball back, at least not with much time, even after a sack there. So got to kind of sometimes just take that sack. It's a young guy trying to make a big play, and he's been a great quarterback all season, but just kind of a moment there where made kind of a mental error. And then Greathouse again. 3rd and 3 for Notre Dame. Riley Leonard fits a pass into a tight window. That one almost looked like a questionable throw, but instead he's able to get it in. Greathouse makes the play, picks up like 10 yards, and basically sets up that field goal for Mitch Jeter, who is 5 for 5 on field goals, which are all from 40 to 49 yards, interestingly enough, in this college football playoffs since the new year. So not including that first round game against Indiana, though he was 2 for 3 in that game. So he's been really good. Again, 5 for 5 in the quarterfinals and semifinal. For me, the big takeaway from this game is how Notre Dame was able to hold the Penn State passing, to hold Drew Aller to just 135 yards and an interception. I think that will be huge in applying to the national championship game, because they will need to slow down the Ohio State passing, and I think they proved, though not as efficient or effective of a unit, that they can really hamstring a passing attack like they have done all season. They have one of the best secondaries in the country, and they also have some good pass rushers who are able to kind of disturb the quarterback as well. Even though they're missing guys, they've had guys out like Riley Mills, for example, and often on this even Howard Cross III. So that is the takeaway for Notre Dame. I think that's the big one here. I think it's also that their offense has been able to step up and make the plays. Riley Leonard's not going to go out there and hit you with massive numbers, but he's very much a winner. I think he's a really good leader for the Fighting Irish, and they also have something that Ohio State maybe doesn't have in a clutch kicker like Mitch Jeter, who's been really good in the postseason. shifting gears over to that Cotton Bowl where Ohio State got a 28-14 win in another big game at AT&T Stadium, 10 years removed, almost to the day from when they won the national championship there. They get a 28-14 win over Texas to go back to the championship game for the third time in the last 10 years. Kind of easy to forget they went to the one at the Orange Bowl, actually, at the Dolphin Stadium against Alabama in that 2020 season. Kind of some key moments here in this game. An opening drive turnover on downs for the Ohio State defense really proved that they were going to be there to play the whole way and were going to make things really difficult for the Texas offense. I think we kind of knew that going into the game, but getting that turnover on downs, even with Texas kind of moving the ball a little bit, was huge early on. Then this game, Ohio State goes and scores on their first drive, and then Texas had all the momentum. They had scored a game-tying touchdown and were looking like they were going to be in control. It was going to be a 7-7 ball game going into halftime. But per a great call by Chris Fowler saying that Henderson has the ability to make a house call whenever, he does that on a screen pass that he takes 75 yards for a touchdown to put Ohio State up 14-7 at the break. However, then kind of started the second half, momentum really swung back to Texas, and that's a credit to the Longhorns for being able to stay in it, especially defensively. Obviously, they didn't do a whole lot offensively, but with how that game had been going, they had done enough to get into that fourth quarter to be tied 14-all. And then we get into kind of later, midway through the fourth quarter, Will Howard gets a designed run that was actually kind of in a similar predictive way, I guess, Nostradamus, whatever you want to call it. Tim Tebow on the ESPN2 broadcast was talking about how Chip Kelly might draw something up for Will Howard because they hadn't really yet, and that's exactly what happened. Howard gets a QB keeper, I think it was a QB draw, and takes it up the middle. Probably would have gone for 6 if he hadn't stumbled on his own feet. So that was a huge moment there, because if that's a turnover on downs, Texas is still slightly in the driver's seat in terms of momentum. It had kind of stalled out by that point, but they certainly would have had momentum with a stop there. Instead, Ohio State gets that first down. And then we get to that drive ended in a Quinshon Judkins short touchdown rush a couple plays later. So it's 21-14. Then we get to a huge drive. Texas goes right down the field. Quinn Ewers finds Matthew Golden, who had been dealing with injuries throughout the game, was able to come in and make a big pickup. And Texas gets the ball down to the Ohio State 1-yard line. So we're first and goal at the 1-yard line after a penalty, or I think maybe a couple of penalties, which was an issue for Ohio State. That's one thing I'll talk about later. Maybe even more in my next video. But anyways, Texas gets the 1-yard line. Then we have, I think, Tyreek Williams, and I'm trying to remember who else kind of plugged that hole to stop Texas short at the 1-yard line. Then an interesting play call that I can kind of understand both sides to. Joel Klatt, for example, has talked about how a toss sweep to the outside is something that can kind of, go against Ohio State's ability to just plug everything up the middle. But in this situation, even he said that kind of on the flip side of it, not the best play call there, because you're already going, 7 yards back just to get that ball in the backfield. And on that play, Caleb Downs kind of slows down Texas running back. I can't remember now who had the ball on that play. And then Lathan Ransom gets there to finish the job. So now Texas is back, third and goal from their own from the Ohio State 8-yard line. And then they try to go with a pass, and Jack Sawyer gets in there, disrupts the pass, tips it at the line of scrimmage, and it falls incomplete on a play that if it's not tipped, it would have been tough for Texas to get. I think Golden was the one who was targeted on that one as well, but it certainly made a big difference getting that tip at the line of scrimmage. Then a play that will go down in Ohio State history, especially if this run ends in a national championship, with Ezekiel Elliott's run 85 yards through the heart of the South. Jack Sawyer once again gets through, basically untouched by the Texas offensive line, gets to his former roommate, Quinn Ewers, the Texas quarterback, obviously Ohio State transfer, strips the ball, picks it up, goes 83 yards through the eye of Texas for a touchdown to put Ohio State up by 14, exactly how Ezekiel Elliott's touchdown put the Buckeyes up by 14 in that Sugar Bowl back in the 2014 season, in 2015. So that was a case of another Ohio State goal line stand, and they've had a lot this season. Obviously in the win over Penn State, even the game against Nebraska, and even in losses to Oregon and Michigan, there were situations where those teams were at, inside the 5 or inside the 10 with 3 or 4 plays to get into the end zone, and they weren't able to. You think of even in the Michigan game, the Jack Sawyer interception, that if Ohio State's offense had been competent that day, would have been already sealed his legacy. Now Sawyer really does that with this play. But that just kind of shows how hard-nosed, how tough the Ohio State goal line defense is. Now, on the offensive side of things, it's kind of the reverse. It's not so much of the stars showing up in this game. Just got 81 total rushing yards in this game and only 3 receiving yards from Jeremiah Smith. And that's a huge credit to the Texas defense. If you want to give credit to, individual cornerbacks, I think it's more about how they kind of bracketed him in coverage. And I think it was a great defensive scheme by the Longhorns to limit him. But instead of Smith, it was Carnell Tate. It was Travion Henderson, and of course, the guy who goes so under the radar but deserves all the credit in the world, Emeka Egbuka. Those 3 guys combined for 13 receptions for 213 yards, and the touchdown, obviously, to Henderson. G. Scott also continues to be kind of that guy who picks up that chunk yardage, 5 receptions for 30, and then Quinshon Judkins with 2 rushing touchdowns. So for the offense, this shows that they can do enough even if Jeremiah Smith is limited. And I think that is certainly a possibility. Christian Gray has stepped up. I know Notre Dame is still missing and will be missing, obviously, Benjamin Morrison. They've had guys who have stepped up, though, Leonard Moore as well. I'll look at that more when I go over my national championship preview, but that's just something kind of I observed, is that Ohio State has other guys who can step up, including guys out of the backfield. I think Judkins also had 3 receptions for 20 yards or something like that, 22 maybe. So that shows that this Ohio State offense has a lot of weapons. And kind of, to me, the biggest takeaway, it's back to that goal line defense, the quote that Ohio State has kind of played by this season: give us an inch of grass and we'll defend it. And that's what they do. I mean, you saw it on that first play. If it wasn't for the 7-yard loss, I still think Ohio State probably gets the stop there. And even if they didn't, offense would have had time to potentially go down and score anyways. And it was kind of an exclamation point then when Caleb Downs got the interception to officially seal it. And then it was just a couple of kneel downs for Ohio State. So those are kind of my takeaways from the semifinals. Again, in a couple days, I will have a full national championship preview going over kind of some of the key areas, kind of a look at all the players who will be expected to make an impact in that game, and maybe a little bit of like a storyline of how these teams both got to the national championship. But it was a great semifinals. For really the 3rd straight year, we had really entertaining games. The Ohio State 14-point win is not accurate to how well played and competitive that game was. It was certainly more of a, one-score game type of feel. But that's all for this episode of College Football Talk. I'm your host, Peter Burtnett, signing out. Peace.